I grew up learning that family can be both a shelter and a storm. In mine, the storm always seemed to circle above me. My name is Ava. I work in finance in New York City, and for years I was the one who held our household together even when nobody cared to notice. Let me tell you who they are. Monica is my mother, a woman whose closets spill over with sequined gowns she wears once and discards. Paula is my father, forever dreaming up ventures that collapse before they see daylight. Ashley is my cousin, the golden child preparing for her glittering wedding. Emily, my younger sister, has chased one startup after another, mostly beauty products that never reach the market. And Megan, the youngest, lives more in the world of screens than in our kitchen, always needing faster internet, always sure someone else will cover the bill. That someone was me. I paid rent when Monica forgot. I covered credit cards when Paula's projects failed. I put down deposits for Ashley's leases and loaned Emily seed money that never sprouted. I even upgraded Megan's internet service when she threatened to drop out of school without it. For 8 years, I tracked it all in a file on my computer family support ledger. Line after line, transfers, loans, deposits. The total came to $182,400, a sum that could have built a home invested in my own future. Instead, it evaporated into theirs. Still, I kept quiet. Families, I told myself, run on loyalty. My loyalty was money, though it left me empty. Ashley basked in admiration. Emily was called the brave dreamer. Megan was indulged as the youngest. Monica and Paula scolded me for being too serious. Never mind that my seriousness kept the lights on. I became the scapegoat who footed the bill. The message that broke it came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. My phone buzzed with a group chat titled Family Only. The words were simple. We need space from you. Do not reach out anymore. 7 words as sharp as glass. I read them once, twice, a third time. No explanation, no phone call, no warmth, just exile in plain text. I dialed Monica. Voicemail. Paula. Voicemail. Even Megan's line rang unanswered. Silence sat heavy in my chest. I had long suspected they valued my help more than my presence. Now they had made it official. That night, I spread photographs across my table: birthdays, graduations, holidays. In every picture, there was something I had paid for: the cake at Megan's 12th, the gown Ashley wore at prom, the airfare for Emily's short semester abroad. I studied them the way an accountant studies losses. My generosity had been a ledger, my role a balance sheet. I had not been a daughter or a sister in their eyes, only a line of credit. My Aunt Nora, the only one who ever spoke truth, called the next day. She told me Monica and Paula had gathered the family the night before, whispering that I was controlling with money. I laughed without humor. Controlling after 8 years of carrying them. But I thanked her because she was the only one willing to risk honesty. By Friday, the bitterness had settled into something sharper: clarity. I would not argue with them. I would not beg for a place at their table. Family that sees you only as an account is no family at all. Still, I did not yet know what form my answer would take. The rehearsal dinner came that evening. Ashley shone like a diamond under rooftop lights in Soho, basking in the glow of friends and photographers. When my turn came to raise a glass, she leaned in and whispered loud enough for me alone. "This is not your house. You are only here because we pity you." Her smile stayed wide for the cameras, but her words struck like a stone. Guests laughed at some other joke, glasses clinked. My throat tightened as I lowered my glass. And yet, as I stood there, a thought rooted itself inside me. Betrayal had been named at last. It would not end with me standing small in their shadows. I did not need to fight with shouts. I had something else: 8 years of numbers and a truth stronger than their whispers. The ledger would speak. And when it did, they would finally hear me, even if they wished they had not. In the days after that rooftop dinner, the air between us grew colder than January wind. Monica and Paula ignored my calls entirely. Emily posted smiling photos on social media with captions about family unity, as if I had never existed. Megan left a single message short and bitter, demanding I cover her overdue subscription fees. Even Ashley, the bride-to-be, sent a note that felt more like a decree than a request. Attendance is expected at the rehearsal, though please keep your comments brief. I stared at those words for a long time. There was no warmth, no sense of kinship. I was no longer invited as family, merely tolerated as a placeholder. And yet, I went. I have learned that sometimes the most revealing moments arrive not in private quarrels, but in public stages. The rooftop gleamed with rented lights and polished glassware. Waiters moved quietly among guests, balancing trays of champagne flutes. Ashley, radiant in ivory satin, floated from group to group with the confidence of someone certain the world adored her. Monica clutched a jeweled clutch as though it were a crown. Paula spoke loudly about his latest venture, a deal in real estate that, like all his others, had no firm footing. Emily leaned against a pillar, checking her phone for messages from investors that would never call. Megan sulked nearby, half her attention on the screen she never put down. I kept to the side, sipping water, watching. When the toasts began, I heard the familiar rhythm. Paula cleared his throat and declared Ashley the pride of the family. Monica praised her daughter's elegance and courage. Emily offered a stumbling anecdote about shared dreams, while Megan mumbled something about sisterhood. Applause followed each speech, polite and practiced. Then it was my turn. Someone handed me a glass and all eyes turned. Before I could speak, Ashley leaned close, lips curled in a smile, and hissed, "You should be grateful we even let you in the family photo." Her voice was sugar for the crowd, venom for me. I looked at her, then at the waiting guests. My throat tightened, but I lifted my glass anyway. "To family," I said softly. No one noticed the way my hand shook. Laughter rippled, not at my words, but at some joke shared among themselves. And I understood in that instant what I had been reduced to: a footnote at their celebration, an accessory to their image. The humiliation was not loud, not dramatic. It was sharper for being quiet, the kind that slides under the skin and settles there. Later that evening, as I sat alone at a small table, my phone buzzed. A group message again. "Since you're here, please cover the final florist bill. We'll pay you back after the honeymoon." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. After 8 years of sacrifice, after being dismissed, pitied, and silenced, they still believed I would open my account for them. I typed 7 words. "Of course I'll cancel my direct deposits." That was it. No explanation, no anger, just 7 words. I pressed send, and almost immediately the replies poured in. "Monica, what do you mean, Paula? This is ridiculous. Ashley, do not ruin my weekend. Megan, but the internet bill. What about me? Emily, you're selfish. You'll regret this." I set the phone down, turned off the sound, and watched the city lights shimmer beyond the glass. For the first time in years, I felt the weight shifting off my shoulders. Humiliation had been the spark, but silence would be my fire. They wanted me erased from their circle. I would grant their wish. And when the moment came, the truth would step into the light, carrying a power they could not deny. When you live long enough in the company of betrayal, you stop expecting the blow to be loud. More often than not, it comes in whispers, in slips of paper, in small discoveries that unsettle the ground under your feet. After I sent those 7 words, "Of course I'll cancel my direct deposits," I thought perhaps the storm would pass. But storms, as I have learned, have many layers. I spent that weekend quietly at home. The city outside my window roared as usual, sirens rushing down Broadway, music from rooftop parties, the restless heartbeat of New York, but in my apartment there was only stillness. I made coffee, black as tar, and opened the family support ledger. For years, that spreadsheet had been my secret confession booth. Line after line of transfers, loans, and payments I had made for Monica, Paula, Ashley, Emily, and Megan. The numbers were familiar, almost comforting. $182,400. I knew every digit by heart. But as I scrolled further, my eyes caught something odd. There was an account number I had never entered. Then another. 3 credit cards listed under my name, balances already climbing. 2 phone lines tied to my social security number. And there, more damning than all the rest, a co-signed lease for Ashley's luxury apartment with my name listed as a responsible tenant. My first thought was denial, perhaps an error, a clerical mistake. But I have worked in finance long enough to recognize the truth when it stares you down. This was not generosity misused. This was theft. Identity theft. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and for a long moment I could hear nothing but my own breathing. My family had not only drained my bank accounts and my patience, they had reached into the very core of my life, my credit, my legal name, my reputation. To some people, fraud is numbers on a page. To me, it was my future, my dignity, my chance to breathe freely in a city that demands proof of solvency at every turn. That night, sleep came only in fragments. I dreamed of papers with my signature forged in crude strokes, of phone calls I never made, of debts piled at my doorstep. I woke with a knot in my chest and the clarity of a soldier who knows the next battle has already begun. The next morning, I reached for the phone and dialed Diane. She is not family by blood, but in many ways she has been more dependable than anyone related to me. Diane works as a financial advisor, and she has a voice like calm water. When I told her what I had found, she did not sigh or gasp. She simply said, "Ava, you need an attorney. Today." By noon, I was sitting in a modest office on Madison Avenue. The blinds were half drawn against the sun, and across the desk sat Rebecca Jensen, an attorney who specializes in identity theft. Rebecca had a sharp gaze that made me sit straighter in my chair. I laid out the documents, the credit report, the lease, the unknown accounts, and waited for her judgment. She flipped through the pages quickly, then looked up. "You've been patient, far too patient. This isn't family drama anymore. This is criminal fraud." The words struck me harder than Ashley's whispers at the rehearsal dinner. Criminal. Fraud. My own parents, my cousins, my siblings using me not just as a bank, but as a mask to wear while they borrowed and spent. Rebecca outlined a plan. First, freeze my credit across all 3 bureaus. Second, file disputes against every fraudulent account. Third, prepare cease and desist letters addressed to Monica, Paula, and Ashley, warning them to stop using my information or face legal consequences. Fourth, notify Ashley's landlord that I had never consented to be on that lease. And fifth, create a new barrier around my income, an LLC or a light advisors, so that my work and my taxes would no longer be exposed to family exploitation. Her voice was precise, but underneath it I sensed compassion. She knew how deep these wounds went. She knew that this was not simply about numbers. It was about betrayal, wearing the face of kin. Diane added another concern. Months ago, during one of Paula's harebrained ventures, I had signed a temporary power of attorney to help with a property filing. I had almost forgotten about it. Diane, with the sharpness of someone who never forgets, reminded me that if that power remained active, Monica or Paula could attempt to use it against me. My stomach dropped. I had an escrow account holding $80,000 for a condo I was preparing to buy a home of my own, finally, after years of renting. If they touched that money, my dream would dissolve. Rebecca slid a paper across the desk. "Sign this revocation. Deliver it to the title company today." I signed, my hand steady despite the tremor in my chest. Hours later, I stood in the lobby of Hudson Title LLC, handing the sealed envelope to a clerk, who stamped it in thick ink. "No outside authorization will touch this," he assured me. I walked out into the street holding the receipt like a shield. That evening, back in my apartment, I spread the documents across the table. Fraud, affidavits, credit freeze confirmations, cease and desist drafts, the escrow revocation. For the first time, the evidence was not just numbers in my private ledger. It was armor. I thought about Monica's jeweled clutches, Paula's booming promises, Ashley's satin gown, Emily's hollow pitches, Megan's streaming subscriptions. They had believed my silence meant surrender. But silence can be more powerful than any shout. It is the pause before a verdict, the breath before the gavel falls. As I stacked the papers neatly, a strange calm washed over me. Revenge, I realized, is not fire or fury. It is signatures. It is seals. It is law turning betrayal into consequence. And I was ready. There are moments in life when the air itself seems to hold its breath. For me, that moment came on the rooftop of a Manhattan hotel at Ashley's rehearsal dinner. The city skyline glowed behind us, tall towers lit like candles against the night. Guests in polished shoes and sequined gowns clustered at tables. The champagne moved faster than the waiters could refill. I had attended many of these events before, always as a shadow, always footing a bill, or smoothing a wrinkle. But this time was different. This time I carried an envelope in my bag heavier than any jewel. Inside, it was a USB drive notarized and sealed, holding a video message from my late Aunt Nora. Alongside it, a certified copy of her trust, the Harbor Nest Trust, valued at $2.6 million. The condition was simple: anyone proven to have exploited or defrauded another family member would be disinherited. And thanks to Rebecca and Diane, I now had evidence stacked higher than the wedding cake. The evening began with laughter. Paula stood at the microphone first, telling stories of Ashley's childhood bravery, though his anecdotes were as polished as they were untrue. Monica followed, declaring Ashley the family's brightest jewel. Emily offered a trembling story about shared dreams, while Megan, eyes never leaving her phone, mumbled a half-hearted toast about sisterhood. The guests applauded politely after each. Then the microphone passed to me. Ashley smiled, that sharp smile again, the one meant to slice without leaving a mark. "Keep it short," she whispered, her teeth barely moving. "No one wants to hear your life story." I lifted the glass, my hand steady. "To family," I said. That was all. Polite, quiet, forgettable. The crowd clapped, already moving on, but I was not finished. At that moment, a projector flickered to life on the rooftop wall. At first, people thought it was part of the planned slideshow, childhood photos maybe, or engagement portraits. But instead, there appeared the face of Aunt Nora, speaking with the clarity of someone who had prepared her words for a moment just like this. "If you are watching this," she began, "then I am gone, and it is time to settle my affairs. I created the Harbor Nest Trust, holding assets valued at $2.6 million. This trust will belong solely to Ava, my chosen heir. But let it be clear, any family member who attempts to exploit, deceive, or commit fraud against her will forfeit any claim to these assets." The rooftop fell silent. Forks froze in midair. Glasses hung untouched. I could hear the hum of the city below, as though Manhattan itself leaned closer to listen. Ashley's smile cracked. Monica's jeweled hand clutched the table. Paula shifted in his chair, his face draining of color. Emily's phone slipped from her grasp. Megan finally looked up from her screen. And then, as if the universe wished to hammer the point home, another image splashed onto the wall. Not from the USB, this came from someone's phone, connected without warning. It was a screenshot of the family group chat. The very message they had sent me: "We need space from you. Do not reach out anymore." Beneath it, mocking comments, Ashley joking that I was the family's walking ATM, Emily laughing that I was too plain to be noticed, Monica writing that I should be grateful for crumbs. Gasps rippled across the tables. Guests covered their mouths. Some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Phones lifted discreetly, recording. The humiliation they had once reserved for me now turned back on them, magnified by 100 watching eyes. Ashley lunged toward the projector, but it was too late. The damage was done, and the room would never forget. I did not raise my voice. I simply pulled the sealed envelope from my bag and laid it on the table in front of Monica and Paula. Inside were the fraud affidavits, the cease and desist letters, the credit freezes, the escrow revocation. Proof upon proof. You thought my silence meant surrender, I said quietly. It meant preparation. Paula stammered. Monica hissed through clenched teeth. Ashley slammed her glass onto the table so hard the stem snapped. Emily muttered something about misunderstandings. Megan sat pale and speechless, but the guests, the colleagues, friends, distant relatives, they had already made up their minds. In the court of public opinion, the verdict had been delivered. Phones buzzed with notifications as clips uploaded to social media within minutes. Hashtags spun out into the night. The whispers that had once diminished me were now shouts echoing across the digital world, carrying their cruelty for strangers to judge. For the first time, I did not feel small. I felt steady. The trust was mine, the law was on my side, and the truth had been spoken not by me, but by their own words, their own betrayal. The dinner staggered on, but the air was poisoned. Laughter had died. Only the scraping of cutlery remained. I excused myself quietly, leaving them to stew in the ruins of their image. As the elevator doors closed, I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel. For years, I had seen myself as their scapegoat, their forgotten sibling, their silent supporter. But now I saw something different. A woman holding her ground, armed, not with rage, but with evidence. And evidence, I realized, always speaks louder than denial. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I woke with a kind of clarity I had never known before. For years, I had carried them on my shoulders. Now I felt taller without the weight. Still, I knew the battle was not finished. Public humiliation had cracked their facade, but the true consequences, the financial, the legal, the personal, were still to come. The brunch that followed was supposed to be a victory lap for Ashley, one last chance to bask in attention before the wedding vows. Guests gathered in a sunlit hall, the air thick with the scent of pastries and bitter coffee. I arrived quietly, taking a seat near the back, though I noticed the way heads turned, whispers trailing me. The video, the group chat leak, those had already made their rounds online. Strangers knew the truth now. Monica approached first, her jeweled hands trembling, though her voice tried to remain sharp. You think you've won because of a video we made you. We fed you. Now you owe us. I reached into my bag and placed a folio on the table between us. These, I said softly, are cease and desist letters. Fraud affidavits, credit freezes. Every account you touched in my name is now under investigation. You didn't feed me, Monica, you bled me dry. Paula lumbered closer, his voice booming, desperate to command the room. You are nothing without this family. Without our name, you are invisible. I opened another folder. Inside was a notice from Hudson Title LLC, stamped and signed, revoking every shred of power of attorney they once held. I am not invisible, I replied. I am protected. The condo escrow, the trust, the LLC, all of it is beyond your reach. Ashley slammed her palm against the table, rattling the silverware. Her voice cut high and sharp. This is my wedding weekend. You don't get to steal the spotlight. I looked at her, steady and calm. Spotlight isn't stolen, Ashley. It shifts when the truth comes out. Emily tried next, her voice quivering as she attempted persuasion. Maybe we overstepped, Ava, but can't we just settle this quietly? For the sake of appearances? I shook my head. Appearances are what got us here. You cared more about the picture than the person. Now the picture is ruined and the person refuses to be erased. Megan for once said nothing. Her phone lay forgotten on the table, her face pale as she realized the flow of easy money had dried up. It was then that a sound cut through the air, a chime from Monica's phone. She fumbled, glanced at the screen, and gasped. Her credit card company had sent an alert: account frozen, payment overdue, penalty interest nearly 30%. The color drained from her face. Another chime followed, this time Paula's phone. His venture partner had backed out, unwilling to associate with a man caught up in fraud allegations. One by one, their walls collapsed, not by my hand, not by my voice, but by the weight of their own actions catching up with them. The guests at brunch watched in silence. Some pretended to sip their coffee, others stared openly, recording pieces of the scene on their phones. The family that had once prided itself on image now stood exposed, undone not by gossip, but by proof. I rose slowly, gathering my papers. "This isn't vengeance," I told them. "This is justice. Every dollar I spent, every signature you forged, every word you whispered, it all led here. And now it ends." Ashley tried to speak again, but her voice broke. Monica sat rigid, eyes wet with fury rather than grief. Paula muttered something about betrayal, as though betrayal had not been theirs first. Emily reached for me, but her hand found only empty air. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the hall buzzed with whispers, the kind that linger long after a meal is finished. The elevator doors closed, reflecting my face back to me. For the first time in years, I did not see the family's scapegoat. I saw a woman who had survived humiliation, endured betrayal, and chosen the sharp edge of truth over the dull ache of silence. Outside, the city roared as it always did. Cabs honked, pedestrians hurried, the sky stretched wide. Life went on, indifferent to one family's collapse. I stepped into the sunlight carrying nothing but a slim folio and the calm certainty that I had finally walked away on my own terms. 6 months have passed since that final confrontation. Seasons have turned, the city has changed clothes, and I have learned what life feels like when the air is no longer heavy with obligation. My mornings are quiet now. I rise with the sun, brew coffee in a small kitchen that is finally mine, and water the plants on a balcony overlooking the street. The condo was finished not long after the brunch, and when I first stepped inside, keys cool in my palm, I knew I had crossed a threshold. For years, my earnings had been poured into other people's pockets. Now they had built me a home. The walls are painted in shades I chose: calm grays, soft greens. I hung photographs of places I visited, not of family gatherings where I had been an afterthought. There is a freedom in decorating for yourself, in shaping a space without anyone else's approval hanging over you. I have even started a new tradition: Sunday dinners with the people I call my chosen family. They are not relatives by blood. Diane comes most often, bringing a bottle of wine and the steady humor that has carried me through darker days. Rebecca, my attorney, drops by when she can, usually with a new story about a client who discovered strength in the law. Friends from work, neighbors from my building, even a retired teacher I met at the library. They all gather around my table. We eat, we laugh, we share stories without fear of ridicule. It is not the family I was born into, but it is the family I chose, and that makes all the difference. Professionally, my life has grown in ways I never expected. The LLC Oralite Advisors has taken on new clients. Word of mouth spreads quickly when people hear about someone who stood firm against exploitation. I have been invited to speak at community events about financial boundaries, about the quiet strength of saying enough. It is not fame, but it is purpose, and purpose feeds the soul more than applause ever could. And what of the family I left behind? Word reaches me now and then. Ashley's wedding went forward, though smaller than planned. Many guests declined, uncomfortable with the shadow of scandal. Paula's venture collapsed, creditors circling until he sold off what little remained. Monica sold her jewelry, one glittering piece at a time, to cover mounting debts. Emily works part-time at a cosmetics counter, her startups shelved. Megan live streams less often now, weighed down by bills she can no longer pass to someone else. They have reached out, of course. A text from Monica, framed as an apology but carrying the scent of desperation. A call from Paula, his voice heavy with charm that no longer works on me. Even Ashley once sent an email asking if we could reset the family dynamic, as though betrayal could be erased like a misspelled word. I answered none of them. And yet I am not cruel. When Monica's message grew more desperate, I agreed to meet once on my terms. We sat in a cafe near my building, a neutral place public enough to prevent dramatics. I slid a single page across the table, a term sheet. 3 conditions. Respect my privacy. Never use my name or resources without consent. Acknowledge openly what was taken and why it was wrong. If those conditions are met, we may speak again. If not, silence will remain. Monica's eyes watered, though whether from regret or anger I could not tell. She signed nothing that day, and that too was an answer. I walked home lighter because I finally understood closure is not something they could give me. It was something I claimed for myself the moment I chose boundaries over longing. Now, when I sit on my balcony in the evening, the city humming below, I think about what family means. Blood may bind, but loyalty defines. To be loved because of who you are, not what you provide, that is the only inheritance worth having. For those listening, perhaps you have faced something similar. Maybe your own family has mistaken your generosity for obligation, your patience for weakness. Maybe you know the sting of being humiliated at a table where you should have been cherished. If so, hear this: you are not alone, and you are not powerless. The law is not just for corporations and contracts, it is for you too. And silence is not surrender. It can be the pause before the truth speaks with undeniable force. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Do you believe forgiveness is owed by blood or earned through care and respect? I would love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment with the word boundary if you know the strength of drawing a line, and share this story so others might find courage in it. As for me, I am content. My home is filled with laughter of friends, not the weight of debts. My mornings belong to me, and so does my future. The ledger that once bound me is closed. The new chapter is already being written page by page in peace. And that is the lesson: plain as day, betrayal may wound, but it does not have to define you. Revenge need not be loud or cruel. Sometimes the sharpest strike is simply living free, living whole, and never letting anyone use your name as their ladder again.